Hello, this is Hiroshi Hayashi, Hamama City, Japan. Fort Worth under attack. Warning from aliens. 攻撃されるフォートワース。エイリアンからの警告。1% でもミスや間違いを見つけると、すべてを否定してしまう人がいます。しかし、1% でもそこに真実を感じたら、99% の部分にも目を向けるべきではないでしょうか。2011年の5月10日にアメリカ軍のフォートワース基地がエイリアンに攻撃されたというニュースが流れています。それは本当なのか、それともそうでないのか、今日はそれについて検証してみたいと思います。アウトラインです。まず、本ポール・ヘリア、カナダの前国防大臣の証言を聞いていただきます。それから、フォートワースが攻撃されている様子を皆さんに見ていただきます。その理由として考えられるのがビマーナなんですね。アフガニスタンでビマーナが見つかったというニュースです。そして最後にエイリアンからの警告です。まず、本ポール・ヘリアさんの証言を聞いていただく前にですね、今、いろいろな、なんて言いますか、方がですね、その事実を知る方々が、こうして暴露証言をしています。ニール・アームストロングもその一人ですね。そして別の、言いますか、宇宙飛行士は、エイリアンは実在していると断言しています。では、本ポール・ヘリアさんの証言をお聞きください。
Former Prime Minister of Defense Force of Canada, Mr. Paul Hiller, stated as a Congress that UFOs are as real as airplanes flying over the head. This is a very shocking news, and also he said at least 2 of them are probably working with US government. I believe other species that I learned about were long ago called tall white. This is the story about it. Thank you.
To speak to a symposium at the University of Toronto, and I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. On Earth at this present time, and at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. To become spiritual beings and practice the one tenet that the world's major religions have in common, and that is the golden rule.
で、テキサスのフォートバースで起きた開口現象をこれから皆さんに見ていただきますが、このメールオンラインはその直後に、発表された記事です。コラムですね。で、これはアメリカ軍側、あるいは政府側の発表として、フォートワースの開口現象は、近くで嵐が起きたと。その影響で、フォートワース基地のトランスフォーマーですね。いわゆる変圧器、変電機が故障した。その故障事故で、こうした開口現象が起きたんだということを説明しています。が、しかし、おかしいということで、クエスチョンマークをつけています。ということを頭に入れながら続くビデオをご覧いただきますと、言いますか、皆さん自身でね、その開口現象がどんなものであるかを見ていただきますと、別の判断ができるんじゃないかと思います。1% の真実がその中に隠されているように私は感じます。 戦争がですね、戦争というか攻撃がですね、フォートワース、アメリカのフォートワースでなされたんですね。この詳しいビデオはこの後につなげておきますからまたご覧ください。で、ここで向こうでパカパカパカっと光ってますよね。で、これがエイリアンからの攻撃だというふうに言われてますし、私の検証の結果では、これはかなりでも信憑性が高いというか、後でくっつけた、なんて言いますか、光爆発じゃなくてですね、いわゆる周囲が同じように光りますからね、CG ではそこまではやりませんからね、できません。ですから、これは極めて信憑性の高い、動画だと思います。いわゆるアメリカ軍の基地がですね、エイリアン側の攻撃を受けていると。また後のビデオの中で紹介しますけども、その上空には UFO が映っていたんですね。ということで、この2つの今度動画をですね、比べてみるんですね。で、フォートワースのこの攻撃に関してですね、UFO ウォッチャーの方のホームページがこれなんですね。その攻撃によって500人近いアメリカ兵が亡くなっていると。ただ気になりますのはですね、この記事の中で、その500人の他にですね、2010年に世界の首脳が集まったというこの部分ですね。実は2010年には確かに集まってはいるんですけども、発見されたのは2000年以前というふうに理解しています。ここですね。2010年の12月21日に集まったというふうに書いてありますね。しかし、ビマーナが発見されたのは2000年以前です。アフガニスタンの洞窟でビマーナ級の UFO が見つかったという記事がこの記事です。信頼のおけるサイトの記事を翻訳してみました。
2001, suddenly the media paid some interest, because then something appeared that was almost impossible to overlook. Right behind me is Britain's largest radio telescope, the Chilbolton Observatory. And here it was that the greatest sensation in the crop circle history was to appear in the fields right in front of the telescope.
On the morning of 14th of August 2001, a formation was discovered which was different from any other previously seen. From the ground it looked like a tangled mess, wisps of crops spread around in no system. However, in the evening with growing shadows, a picture appeared, unmistakably that of a face. That picture represented a whole new technique, a screen technique, the same that's used for printing a picture on paper. 3 days later, the face was joined by something that looked like a data strip. Rows of counters made out of standing and flattened crop. But soon, an astonishing similarity is discovered. In 1974, the astronomer Carl Sagan composed a message that NASA sent into space from the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico. Binary figures which constituted a graphic code presenting key factors about humans and the planet we live on. 27 years later, an identical pattern appears in a crop field right in front of a similar radio telescope. However, on closer inspection, it seemed to show that the code contained some fundamental differences. Sagan's message explained our calculation system, the dominant chemical substances within the elements that create life on Earth, about our DNA code, humans' height and quantity, and that we live on the third planet in our solar system, and lastly, a sketch of our radio telescope. The message received described the same calculation system, but that silicon is most dominant in life forms in contrast to carbon. The drawing also clearly shows a humanoid figure with large head in relation to its body. It's also explained that they have an extra string in their DNA, are approximately 4 feet tall, inhabit the third, fourth and fifth planets in their solar system, and have a population of around 21.3 billion. Underneath, the telescope has been replaced by something more complex. 1 year earlier, a strange crop circle had appeared in the same place. Is this the same illustration as in the sender's code? Is this the correspondent's radio telescope? If this is not an extremely clever and well-calculated joke conducted by humans, is it a serious response from an alien civilization?
The Chilbolton crop formations really gave new life to the speculations of who is behind this. Is it aliens? Where do they come from? And what is their purpose of this type of communication?
The following year, very nearly on the same day, a new picture appears that gives new force to the alien theory, this time in Crabwood, near the town of Winchester in Hampshire. Once again we see a face, but this time there is an unmistakable resemblance to something extraterrestrial. The picture also contains a print, somewhat similar to that of a CD, with something that appears to be a coded message. This formation also has a new type of design, this time with horizontal line patterns of variable thickness, similar to that of a TV picture. The message on the disk is similar to a spiral band built up of many boxes. But data expert Paul Weige manages to decipher the message.
And I had to enlarge the disk quite substantially on the computer and run some image analysis over it to make it clear so that I could see what was a standing tuft and what was flattened. And while I was doing this, I noticed that every so often there was almost a mistake in the diagram. It was like there was a tuft, where the little square tuft, it had done sort of half size. I thought that's a bit odd, and it seemed fairly regular. I was going round, and I sort of counted up, and it was sort of literally every sort of 8 bytes or whatever. And I thought, oh, 8 bytes, and you know, from computer side, is obviously some sort of binary code. So then I did the straightforward thing. I just converted it into ASCII, which is the standard sort of computer language that you encode the alphabet in. And of course I then started to get words forming out, and I thought, I'm getting somewhere here. So I then did the whole thing for the whole lot, and got this message.
The message is in English and reads as follows.
Beware with the bearers of the false presents and broken promises. Much pain, but still time. And this is very important. You will see why. Believe there is still good out there. I think it's the most important phrase in the message. We oppose deceive, and the conduit is closing. That's what this message says.
ということなんですけども、be aware with bearers と、気をつけろと、気がつけという意味ですね。broken promises、破られた約束に気がつけと、痛みが伴うだろうと、多くの痛みがあるがまだ時間はあると。なんか恐ろしい内容ですね。still time 時間があると。しかしまだ善がそこにあることを、信じろと。命令文だと思いますね。 で、我々はということは、エイリアンが、これエイリアンが書いたとするならばですね、偽り、騙し、欺きに抗議すると。パイプ、いわゆるつながりですね、パイプはクロージングだと。
で、結論ということになりますが、アフガニスタンでビマーナ級の UFO が見つかったというのはどうやら事実のようです。そして西側の首脳たちがアフガニスタンに集まったというのもどうやら事実のようです。しかし、そのアフガニスタンで見つかったビマーナとですね、ハンプシャーに現れたエイリアンの警告文と直接つなぐ証拠はありません。そしてそれと今度はフォートバースの攻撃と直接つなぐ証拠はありません。しかし 1% の可能性がありますから、すべてを否定することもできません。ということで、結論は先延ばしにさせていただきます。また証拠が出てきましたら、話をつなげます。
Hello, this is Hiroshi Hayashi, Hamama City, Japan. This is a sort of an interview program of Paul Hellyer, the former Prime Minister of Defense and Force in Canada. And he said, alien life forms present among us. This is a story about it with my translation. Thank you very much.
It's great to have you with us on our show. Why do you say that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over our heads?
Well, because I know that they are. They've been, as a matter of fact, they've been visiting our planet for thousands of years. And one of the cases that would interest you most, if you give me 2 or 3 minutes to answer, is during the Cold War, 1961, there were about 50 UFOs in formation flying south from Russia to across Europe. And the Supreme Allied Commander was very concerned and about ready to press the panic button when they turned around and went back over the North Pole. They decided to do an investigation, and they investigated for 3 years, and they decided that with absolute certainty that 4 different species at least, had been visiting this planet for thousands of years. So that's, we have a long history of UFOs, and of course there's been a lot more activity in the last few decades since we invented the atomic bomb, and they're very concerned about that and the fact that we might use it again. And because the whole cosmos is a unity, and it affects not just us but other people in the cosmos, they're very much afraid that we might be stupid enough to start using atomic weapons again, and this would be very bad for us and for them as well.
So no serious scientist has ever publicly confirmed evidence of an encounter with extraterrestrials. Why would scientists not confirm the facts if they exist?
I'm afraid they must go out of their way not to find, because if they did, you know, even 10% of the amount of research I've done in the last 8 years, they would be as convinced as I am. I mean, they could do it even faster. Might take them a little longer, a military background, but there are so many wonderful books that tell these stories, and they've been authenticated. The sightings have been authenticated by more than one witness, and also by radar, and they have landed in various places around the world, including Russia. There's a famous case there. I can't remember the name of the place, but it was widely reported at the time. A man wrote a book about it, and then the French bought the book rights so that it wouldn't be circulated around. There's just so much evidence. Take the time off to do a little bit of research and study. But people just are, you know, some people are interested and will take the time, and the others just say, oh, you know, it's just fantasy. Mm-hmm. But since I've been public on this subject, I get, probably 3 or 4 emails a week from all over the world from people who have actually witnessed sightings. And some of them who have actually been on the ships, and some of them who have actually been transported to another planet. And so this information is not you know, it is top secret in a way that the governments aren't talking about it. But if you listen to the whistleblowers and the people who have worked in the industry and who know what is going on, there is just a lot of information out there, and it doesn't take very long to get your hands on it.
But see, the problem is that some people who report UFO sightings and alien abductions have been shown to make things up, and to make things up to be famous, to make money, or just for a prank. How do we tell fiction from a fact?
Well, you have to spend a lot of time trying to find, we used to say, separating the wheat from the chaff, and it takes a lot of effort. When I was minister, I got sighting reports, and when we checked them out, about 80%, about 8 out of 10, were not real. There were sights of Venus or plasma or, you know, a dozen other things. But there were 15 or 20% for which there was no explanation, and they were the genuine unidentified flying objects. These things go way back. One of the conferences I went to was in Las Vegas, was promoted by a chap who had written a book about crashes. And there were dozens and dozens and dozens of them, and many of them very, very well authenticated, so that it would be impossible to read all of that evidence and not to come to the conclusion that these vehicles were real.
Have you ever had your own encounter?
Not an encounter with aliens, no. I have seen a UFO about 120 miles north of Toronto over Lake Muskoka, where I have a cottage. And 2 years ago, last Canadian Thanksgiving, which is October, my wife decided she wanted to go out and look at the stars. So I'm not much of a night man, but I put on my cap and went out with her. And she looked into the eastern sky and said, "There's a star." And I turned around the other way and I said, "Oh, there's a much brighter one over here." And she looked, and it was. And we watched it until our necks almost broke for about 20 minutes. And it was definitely a UFO, because it could change position in the sky by 3 or 4 degrees in 3 or 4 seconds. And I checked out, there were no satellites that could do that. The space station wasn't going by, and it isn't able to move that fast anyway. And there was no other explanation except that it was the real thing. And 2 days later, I went down on the dock, got a comfortable chair, and watched it came back almost to the same spot and entertained me for as long as I could take it. And then I went back to the cottage. But it was very interesting, because it would drop down in the sky, and then it would roar back up, and then it would shift across a few degrees and do a circle and come back at a speed, which, you know, just astronomical speeds. As you know, they travel very, very fast.
So does it just look like a falling star that falls really quickly and then rises again? What does it look like?
Well, it just looked like a star.
It just looks like a star. Right.
And I don't know if you're a person who has ever read the Bible or not, but I think the Star of Bethlehem, God's flying saucers.
Mm-hmm. But you also tell me that people write you emails, 3 to 5 emails a week, and they've actually been abducted, or they have encounters with the aliens. Do they actually tell you what these aliens look like? I mean, you know, everyone's interested. How would I know if I see an alien and if he abducts me?
Well, the first question you have to ask is, how many species are there? And I used to think there were, you know, between 2 and 12. And Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who came to Toronto a few years ago and had dinner with us, agreed there was somewhere between 2 and 12. But the latest reports that I've been getting from various sources are that there are about 80 different species. And some of them look just like us, and they could walk down the street and you wouldn't know if you walked past one. And they're what we call the Nordic blondes, and also the tall whites, who were actually working with the United States Air Force in Nevada. They're able to get away with that. They had a couple of their ladies dressed as nuns went into Las Vegas to shop, and they weren't detected.
And I have a friend who saw one of the men walking along the street, and somebody who would recognize that they were different, and he did. So there are those kind, and then there are the short grays, as they're called, and they're the ones that you see in most of the cartoons. They're have very, very slim arms and legs, and they're very short, just a little over 5 feet, and they have a great big torso and a great big head and great big brown eyes. But they're different species, so you have to know that they're different species, and it's and know that they're all different. Mm-hmm. So if you saw the short gray, you'd certainly know that there was something up that you'd never seen before. But if you saw one of the Nordic blondes, well, you'd probably say, "Oh, I wonder if she's from Denmark or somewhere,"
So this species that you're describing, are they all different in terms of nice and mean? Are some of them nice and benevolent? Are others nasty? Or how are they? Are they good to people on Earth, or are they here to harm them?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer because they have different agendas. And maybe all of us on Earth should have the same agenda, but you couldn't say maybe that Russia and China and the United States all had the same agenda at every turn, because they don't. And I would say that nearly all are benign, they're benevolent, they want to help us. There may be one or two species which do not. And that's one of the things I'm investigating at the moment, is to see who they are and what they're up to and what their agendas really are.
All right, we're talking to Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Minister of Defense, who says extraterrestrial life forms exist and are present on Earth. We'll talk more about what they are and why they're here after a short break. Stay with us. And we're back with Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Minister of Defense, to talk about extraterrestrial life forms. Great to have you back. So these extraterrestrial creatures, where did they come from and how did they get here to Earth?
They come from various places. For a long while, I only knew about ones who came from different star systems. The Pleiades and Reta Reticula and several other star systems, but in the last few months I have met people who have made me aware of that there are some in our star system, and that there are actually extraterrestrials who live on a planet called Andromeda, which is one of the moons of Saturn, and that there are others on Venus and some on Mars, and that they may be interacting between themselves. I suspect that they are, because there is what of these people, and they have rules. For example, one of the rules is that they don't interfere in our affairs unless they're invited to. And that's one of the reasons probably that we haven't seen more of them until very recently. And so
but what do you mean? There are a lot of people who want to interact with them. There are a lot of people who actually want to see them and know who they are. What, they need a special invitation to interact with us? What does it mean? They don't want to interfere into our affairs.
They want to tell us how to run our affairs. They have accepted the fact this is our planet and that we have the right to run it, but they're very, very concerned. They don't think we're good stewards of our planet. We're not. We're clear-cutting our forests, and we're polluting our rivers and our lakes, and we're dumping sewage in the oceans, and we're doing all sorts of things which are not what good stewards of their homes should be doing, and they don't like that, and they've made it very clear. And as a matter of fact, they have given us a warning.
How?
And this has come from more than one source.
How have they made it clear? What have they done?
They have talked to people. One of the chaps I talked to about a month ago was interacting with them in 1974, he and his brother, in Peru, and they were taken to Andromeda, teleported, and they were told what the people there think, and that we're really wrecking our planet, and in fact that something dreadful is going to happen to it if we don't smarten up and change our ways. We spend too much time fighting each other. We spend too much money on military expenditures and not enough on feeding the poor and looking after the homeless and the sick, and that we are polluting our waters and our air, and that we're playing around with these exotic weapons, thermonuclear weapons and atomic weapons, which have such a devastating effect both on our Earth and on other areas in the cosmos, and they don't like that. And that's the reason they would like to work with us to teach us better ways, but only, I think, with our consent. And they work through individuals, and they try and pick out individuals who won't be frightened to death of them, because they can give you quite a fright. One of the cases I'm familiar with was the tall whites in Nevada, where the United States Airmen working with them, were just frightened to death of them. And one, Charles Hall, rescued the daughter of one of the high-up people in the tall whites, and as a result became very good friends with the mother. And as soon as they could trust each other, they had a wonderful relationship. And he wrote a book about it. It's called Millennial Hospitality. Millennial Hospitality. And it tells you how you go through these stages of being scared out of your wits. But then when you establish a trust and a working relationship, why you can have the same relationship, same kind of relationship that you would have with someone here on Earth.
But here's what I'm thinking. If you're outing their presence, which is clearly not what they want since they're hiding, why aren't they so afraid of, why aren't you afraid of repercussions? Because you're obviously stating that they're here among us, and you're telling me all these species that exist.
They are here among us, and I'm not afraid because in most cases, well, as far as technology is concerned, they're light years ahead of us, and we have learned a lot of things from them. A lot of the things that we use today, we got from them. Lead lights and microchips and Kevlar vests and all sorts of things that we got from their technology, and we could get a lot more too, especially in the fields of medicine and agriculture, if we would go about it peacefully. But I think maybe some of our people are more interested in getting their military technology, and I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong-headed, and that's one of the things that we're going to have to change, because we're going to have to work together.
Talking about
all of us, everywhere on the planet.
You mentioned military technology and swapping technologies and barters between aliens and people in American government. I want to ask you, as a former Minister of Defense of Canada, is interstellar war a possibility? Should we be creating a Star Wars force to defend ourselves from possible invasion or something like that?
Well, I think it's a possibility, but it's a possibility especially if we shoot down every UFO that comes in our airspace without asking who they are or what they want. And right from the beginning, we started scrambling planes and trying to shoot them down, but their technology was superior enough that we weren't able to get away with it. Certainly not for a long while. And during that period of time, they could have taken us over without any trouble if they'd wanted to. So I think we have to, rather than develop our own Star Wars, for Earth Star Wars, to protect ourselves against them, that we should work with the benign species, who are the vast majority, and work together and rely largely on them, of course, and cooperate so that we would be contributing something at the same time. But I don't think there's any point in us developing a galactic force that would tempt us to go out on our own and get into mischief, which is one of the things I think some of them are concerned about.
But what do you expect to happen if people start to believe in alien existence? Because things are definitely going to change. Our lives aren't going to be the same anymore.
Well, I hope that's the case. I hope that's the case, and I'm all for full disclosure, and I'm going to push very hard for full disclosure in the book I'm writing, and to give some reasons for it, things that we really have to know and have a right to know, and that our future as a species, and here I mean, you know, all of the species in the world, are potentially at risk if we don't figure out what's going on and work together to try and make life more amenable for all of us.
But
and to work with our neighbors from other planets as well.
But still, like, I'm thinking to myself, if they've been here for such a long time, as you say, and they're interested in helping humanity, as you say, why is our world such a mess? I mean, if you want to help someone, you just help someone. You don't wait for someone to invite you to help that someone, no?
Well, I don't, you know, it's something that I think parents can sometimes say to their children, this is what you should do. But that doesn't mean the children are going to do it, does it? Because the cosmos is based on free choice. And we're given the option of making mistakes, of making wrong choices. And I guess what bothers some of us is we've made too many wrong choices and not enough right choices. So we're going to have to start switching our priorities and stop spending so much time and effort and weapons to kill each other or to dominate each other, and spending a lot more time on how to help each other to have a better society and life which is healthier, and where the health care is better, and where the food distribution is better, and where the air is cleaner and the water is cleaner, and all of those things that are waiting to be done if we just get together and row, as we say, rowboat, row in the right direction, the same direction. And it's possible, but it's a tall order, and so far we haven't done it. My thesis will be that we have to do it, and we have to start doing it right away.
Thank you so much for this interesting interview and insight on extraterrestrial life. That was Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Minister of Defense. He says aliens exist and live among us on Earth. That's all the time we have for today. I will see you in the next edition of Sophie & Co.
「参考文献です。ホンポール・ヘイリアさんの話の中に、チャールズ・ホールという方の名前が出てきます。その方はですね、エリア51の近くの、基地でですね、トール・ワイトと共に仕事をし、トール・ワイトを助けていたという方です。で、その方がですね、退職後といいますか、クビになってからでしょうね、おそらく。20年後に、本を書き始めるわけです。それが、先ほど、ヘイリアさんの証言の中に出てきた本ということになります。で、それをまとめたのが、次の文献です。その中で、チャールズ・ホール氏はですね、かなり詳しく、トール・ワイト、いわゆるその、エイリアンについての、事実を暴露しています。それをどうかお読みください。